anxiety under control. Things were going pretty well in Singapore. And so I don't know if I've mentioned that Moise, after his preschool, he went into a mainstream international school. Now, in those days, I was obsessed that he should go to a mainstream school. Simply because, I mean, in Singapore, we didn't have many choices, but the really special schools where you only had kids with special needs, or just the mainstream international schools. And my family and I, my husband basically being, expats at that point, we didn't have access to the local schools, right? Because our kids had to go to international schools. So my choice was very limited. But frankly, even if I had a choice at that point, I would have still said that, okay, no, Moise must go to an mainstream international school because, I think a major part of that was still my acceptance wasn't complete. I knew, I think subconsciously, that academically he would have his limitations. I mean, in terms of cognition, there were clear signs that he was way behind children who were chronologically his age. But then there was this part of me that kept on saying that he has to have this chance, and I don't want the label of him going to a special school. Somebody will ask me where your son goes, and I'll have to say this special school, and my God, whatever. So I wasn't voicing these things out to myself, but I think this is the process that was happening in my mind. So I scanned the length and breadth of Singapore, and I found one school that was willing to accept him. It was an international mainstream school, and he started going there. And quite honestly, the first 2-3 years, till I would say grade 5 or year 5, he was okay. Of course, academically he was lagging. Speech was improving on a regular basis, but in terms of his social skills, for instance, I think, the teachers would say that in the playground, sometimes he will interact with children. Now, I think interaction basically meant that he was hanging around children. It's not like he had friends as such, or the engagement with other children was appropriate. He was probably, he was a happy kind of kid who would be, smiling or laughing, running around, and it may have appeared that he was doing okay socially, but honestly, he wasn't. Later on, what started happening was, I think, as he grew older, and the academic stress began to become more and more difficult for him to handle, his self-stimulatory behaviors became worse, and they increased. So for instance, the lying down behavior, which I've talked about earlier, where he used to lie down and press his body onto the floor for proprioception, or as he has shared, maybe because he was very stressed. So that behavior became very frequent, and so much so that he started doing that in the playground. So instead of using the floor, he would press himself against the benches and and tables or desks within the school. And this is the feedback I began to get from the school, and that became quite problematic because pressing certain body parts onto hard surfaces was now having a physical reaction, which was inappropriate. So this now was becoming a big issue, not just in school, but at home as well. Because in the playground that was behind our home, these same behaviors started occurring, and Usman and I, we kind of panicked because, he was now no more a little boy, a child. He was I would say, I'm talking about 9-10 years old at this age, and surrounded by other kids, and we became worried that he would get into trouble. In the meantime, since I was doing pretty well on the Prozac, Usman and I decided to have a third child. And there, Mikhail came into the scene. Now, some people ask me, how come you had a third child, knowing that your second one was on the spectrum? And what I say to them is this, that yes, I mean, when I had Murad, my second one, I had no idea that Moise was going to be or was autistic. But I knew very well that there was a chance that my third child might be autistic because, according to research, autism can be hereditary. You know, it has some genetic elements. But at that point, my view was this. I always wanted 3 kids. And I thought to myself, you know, Moise, we love him dearly. And he is a source of great pleasure and a blessing in our lives. So let's say if I was to have a typical child, you know, great, alhamdulillah. But if I was not to have a typical child, if I had another child with autism, I would know what to do. Not to say that I didn't have that fear. That would be, I think, not humanly possible. Not to have that fear, but it was honestly not an overpowering feeling. The fear was not that great.